Welcome to Catholic Answers Live, the program where you participate with your questions about apologetics and evangelization, including the most important theological, spiritual, moral, and social issues facing the world today. Call now with your question for today's guest. Toll free 1-888-31-TRUTH. That's 888-318-7884. Now, from San Diego, Catholic Answers Live.
It's Thursday. Welcome to Catholic Answers Live Open Forum. Open Forum on Thursdays. Open Forum means if you've got a question about the Catholic faith, Catholic life, maybe you got a philosophical question or a question about morals, all of these things are welcome. Whatever's on your mind in those areas that you'd like to discuss, 888-318-7884 is the number. Our guest this hour, Jimmy Akin, senior apologist here at Catholic Answers, the author of A Daily Defense, 365 Days to Becoming a Better Apologist, The Drama of Salvation, The Fathers Know Best, and a host of other things. Hi, Jimmy.
Hey, how you doing, Si?
I am very, very well. Do you have something you'd like to discuss with me? How's that for a segue?
Oh, wow.
Well, no, we're on the air.
That sounds ominous.
Yeah, right.
I'm happy today. I've had three good things happen in the last 24 hours. Number one, I've been making good progress on my current book, which is about church teaching, so I'm happy about that. Number two, I got to show you Citizen Kane last night, a movie you'd never seen.
Loved it.
And a classic, and so that was really nice. And then this morning, I woke up and got some news I had been waiting for a while. They've caught, apparently, the Golden State Killer.
No! How interesting.
Yeah. So for people who may not be aware, the Golden State Killer was a guy that terrorized this was before I lived in California, but he terrorized Californians back in the 1970s, 1980s.
Yeah.
And he was unusually clever and cautious for a serial killer. And frankly, I've read a little bit of true crime. I don't have a lot of stomach for it, frankly.
Yeah.
But I was aware of this guy, and I've been waiting for them to crack this case because it was imminently crackable. They had this guy's DNA, and even though he would have been too clever to ever, and he stopped his crimes early enough that his DNA didn't get into any databases other than they had it from a crime scene. And so he was not in any criminal DNA databases, or he would have been caught long ago. And he was too smart to upload his own DNA into a database. Like, for example, they have, with those home genetic testing kits now, like 23andMe, where you can trace your ancestry and stuff. People will get those genetic tests and then put their DNA in online databases to find lost relatives and stuff.
Oh.
Well, he
didn't do that.
He didn't do that. But you don't need him to do that because people and families share DNA. And so if his sister or his cousin or his niece or somebody like that put their DNA in such a database, then a partial match would come up. It would indicate he belongs to this general family, and that would focus attention on that family. Now,
that's not what happened.
Well, it may be because they've said he was caught through advanced genetic testing, and word on the street is it was through familial DNA. They apparently got some kind of DNA hit about 6 days ago, and so they then realized who he was, and they surveilled him and got some confirmatory DNA samples out of his trash and arrested him yesterday. And so, so now all of the people were these guys victims and their families and so forth now are getting to see justice begin to be done with this guy and getting closure on this, knowing he's not out there on the streets anymore.
How wonderful!
So thank God for that.
Amen. And you said it's up in Sacramento?
Yeah, he turned out to be a former police officer living in Sacramento.
So now we can have CSI Sacramento. Didn't they do? They did those CSI shows for lots of cities, I think.
They have. I haven't seen them myself,
Sacramento would be awesome. Again, our number 888-318-7884. By the way, thanks for showing me Citizen Kane.
Yeah,
I feel like I've accomplished something in my life.
It's a real artistic achievement, isn't it?
Yeah,
as a movie.
It really is. It's very, very impressive. Just loved it.
Yeah.
So Already a bunch of calls, Jimmy, shall we?
Okay.
All right, it is open forum. If you have a question about the life, the faith, the history of the Catholic Church, and you know when Jimmy's here, we broaden that out a little bit. If you want to talk philosophy a little bit, morality, other religions besides Christianity.
Crime scene techniques.
Crime scene techniques or Citizen Kane, give us a call. 888-318-7884. Michael in Houston, Texas, listening on Guadalupe Radio. You are on with Jimmy Akin. Your question, please.
Mm-hmm.
Smaller or minor gods compared to our God, and so that they are actually or could be like, I guess, bad angels and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just threw me for a loop because I'd always just thought there's only one God, no other little gods or anything, and I was just fascinated by his statement. So I was wondering if Jimmy could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so there's some interesting backstory here. In the Greek world, now obviously in the ancient world, there were lots of people who were polytheists who believed in various gods, most of whom were not almighty. They were lesser gods that may have had particular domains they were believed to have influence over, like there would be a thunder god and a sun god and things like that. But they weren't an almighty god of everything. And then under the realm of the gods, there were also typically believed to be other spirits of various kinds. And that view predominated in the Greek world at the time of Jesus, when the New Testament was being written. And at that time in Greek, there were several terms that were used for supernatural beings. One of them was the term daimonion, which we translate in English as demon. And the term didn't originally mean evil spirit, which is what it means to us, or fallen angel, which is even more precisely what it means to us. Originally, daimonion was just a minor spirit that you could kind of whistle up and get to do your bidding. And so magicians in the ancient Greek world would conjure demons and instruct them to do various things. Then above that level, the word that was used for a celestial being was theos, which we translate in English as God. And as you would expect, most of the Greek theoi, or gods, were not almighty. So you had like Apollo, the sun god, and Diana, the moon goddess, also the goddess of the hunt. You had Poseidon, the god of the ocean, and things like that. And so you had these kind of lesser deities. But then some Greek thinkers, including Aristotle, proposed that there would be one great deity behind all of these others, and that was the ultimate creator of the world. And Aristotle and other figures who talked about this deity sometimes referred to him as the demiurgos, which is Greek for craftsman, the craftsman or maker of everything. And so this was kind of the religious idea or worldview that a lot of people in the ancient Greek world had. And then when Christians began, and Jews before them, began to interact with people of this perspective, there was a question of how do you map our worldview onto theirs? Because we believe there is ultimately only one great God. There's the one God who created the world. But the Christian and the Jewish worldview doesn't deny that there are lesser celestial beings. I mean, we call them angels, and there are good angels, and then there are bad angels. And eventually what happened was the term daimonion, or demon, got mapped onto the fallen angels, so that you would have it would be a way of making clear to people that these are lesser beings. They're not to be confused with the great God. And that got extended to the kind of middle range celestial beings that Greeks referred to as gods. And so you did have people in the early church, including among the church fathers, who would say, okay, maybe Zeus and Apollo are real in a sense, but they're not the kind of God you want to worship. They're not theoi. Instead, they're demons, and they're these lesser beings. And since they're wanting people to worship them, they're up to no good. And so they're doing something they shouldn't. They're trying to get worship from humans when we should be directing our worship to the true God. And so the idea got out there and became quite common, and in some places just the standard assumption, that pagan gods might be real beings and they were just demons impersonating or pretending to be good divine beings in order to get worship and have power over people and stuff like that. And so that is a view that's been out there. That's not church teaching, but it is a view that you'll find a lot of early church fathers talking about, and there are even some hints of it in the New Testament, where St. Paul at one point says that the gods of the nations, and if you eat of an idol's altar, you're eating from the table of demons, which could suggest that it does indicate that demons are somehow involved in idol worship, and it could suggest that the demons are impersonating these gods, although Paul doesn't actually say that.
Michael, does that work for you?
Yeah. It just blew my mind. I go thinking I know so many things, and I hear that, I think, what? So, yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I appreciate that chance to clarify that, Michael. We have to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Jimmy Akin on Open Forum on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
We'll be right back with more great answers from Jimmy today on Catholic Answers Live.
If only evangelization was easy. But the truth of the matter is that most of the time, it's not. Talking about the Catholic faith is enough of a challenge even before dealing with the roadblocks that keep people from listening with an open mind. Apologist Carlo Broussard recognized that as he wrote Prepare the Way, a guide to step-by-step strategies that readers can use to break down those barriers to the very existence of God and religious truth, barriers to basic Christian beliefs, and barriers to the distinctive teachings and claims of the Catholic Church. Don't let obstacles get in your way. Learn how to overcome them. Order your copy of Prepare the Way today by calling 1-888-291-8000, logging on to the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
You've heard that St. Paul Street Evangelization supports hundreds of teams of evangelists sharing the good news. But did you know that some of these teams are public prayer stations? Set up a sign on the sidewalk and offer prayer and encouragement to those you encounter. Everyone needs prayer. Try this new method of witnessing to Jesus. Contact St. Paul Street Evangelization to get started at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Hi, this is Trent Horn, and you've probably heard me explain Catholicism to non-Catholic callers on the radio or engage opponents in formal public debates. I've always hoped these interactions would show people how to graciously defend and share our faith. But they're not enough. That's why I've created a weekly podcast that will help Catholics answer the toughest objections against our faith. Every episode of the Council of Trent will provide listeners with a conversation roadmap that will help them share their faith with anyone. Keep in mind that I hate boring lectures. These podcasts will contain entertaining, informative, and practical explanations of the faith, as well as interviews with the best Catholic writers and speakers in the world today. Visit TrentHornPodcast.com today to find out how you can subscribe to my new podcast. That's TrentHornPodcast.com.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live, Open Forum. If you've got questions about the Catholic faith, we'll do everything we can to get you an answer. If you call 888-318-7884. Jimmy Akin is our guest. Jimmy is senior apologist here at Catholic Answers, and we are joined in studio for just a minute by John Sorensen, Chief Operating Officer of Catholic Answers. Are we fired, John? Why are you here?
No way. I'm here because I love you guys.
Oh, all right. Okay. Thanks for coming, John. See you next time.
All right.
But you also came to talk about the conference.
The conference.
Yeah.
That's right. It's coming up. It's not that far away. September 27th to the 30th. Not 2017 like it says in my notes, though.
Oh yeah, this year.
Yeah.
Right. We here at the Hyatt Regency in La Jolla, the faith and science, friends or foes, is the theme of the thing, and we have some magnificent people coming to talk. Including Raymond Cardinal Leo, or do you say Raymond Leo Cardinal Burke? That's how you say it.
When you say it, you say Cardinal Burke or Cardinal Raymond Burke.
Yeah.
Cardinal Raymond Burke.
Yeah. I just call him I call him Cardinal Burke, but I think probably when I'm in his presence, I may call him. What's the proper
Eminence?
address?
Your Eminence.
Your Eminence. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do when I see him.
And you can call Jimmy your M&Ms.
Your M&Ms. That's right.
He could be your
I have a
M&Ms.
picture.
And Jimmy could be your M&Ms.
That was okay. You definitely get points for that.
I
word
got
play.
points, life points. Why? Go ahead, explain the M&Ms.
Well, okay, so if you register by July 2nd, okay, July 2nd, you got to register by July 2nd. You will get M&Ms that have their Jimmy Akin M&Ms. And this is the only place you can get them. You have to register by July 2nd. You have to come to our conference, and you will receive. And I have a picture. I don't know if you can.
If you're online and watching
Can you
the
see that?
streaming, you can see it.
Look right here. There's actually a Jimmy Akin on. Some of them say Jimmy Akin, but there's a picture of him on the M&Ms.
I was surprised that it's like a photographic picture. I thought it was going to be a little cartoon or something. But so special early bird pricing too. If you register before July 2nd, you get the Jimmy Akin M&Ms. Those who order the full conference will also have dinner and a keynote address from Cardinal Burke. You get the
and you can have the Jimmy Akin M&Ms for dinner if you want.
Yeah. Really? Yeah, I guess so. If that's your idea of fun.
You probably could subsist off of those for at least a couple of days, right?
Depending on how many you ate.
Jimmy could subsist off them for like a month. He's fasting. CatholicAnswersConference.com is where you go. CatholicAnswersConference.com.
This is just one of the weirdest things that has ever happened to me in my life. I had no idea my face was ever going to be on M&Ms, and they came and said, "Can we do this?" And I said, "It's really absurd and basically harmless, so yeah, why not?"
Yeah, I think I've had M&Ms on my face before, but never.
Never
had
face on
my face on
M&Ms.
M&Ms.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Jeff Kinney online says any green M&Ms, and that's what I'm advocating for because growing up, green M&Ms were always my favorite color. So
Who asked for that, Jeff?
Jeff online.
Okay, Jeff, we'll see what we can do.
But right now they're the colors of Catholic Answers, which look like the colors of the American flag in the printout you've got there.
And
so,
now on Facebook they're referring to me as your M&Ms. So thank
Oh,
you
yeah.
very
Oh,
much.
your
I think I've acquired another nickname.
Excellent. Nice. All right.
Thanks, John.
Thank
Thanks
you
very
guys.
much
Yep.
for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me. I'll break a leg.
And don't forget, register before July 2nd and get all that good stuff. And then we'll see you September 27th through 30th at the Hyatt Regency La Jolla. Is that the best time of year too, John?
Oh, yeah.
Here in San Diego? That is the best time
The
of
summer
year.
crowds leave.
I have to say,
but it's still summer.
I always feel a little bit guilty. I'm not guilty of this, but I feel guilty when the tourists come in June and it's all overcast for the entire month of June. But
With
if
the
you come in
June
September,
gloom,
June
yeah.
gloom,
Yep.
But if you come in September, it's magnificent.
Yes.
Made
Weather
that
is
word
perfect.
up too. Magnificent.
So CatholicAnswersConference.com.
Yep.
Let's go to Al in Marcellus, New York, watching on YouTube. Al, you're on with Jimmy Akin.
Hi. My question is, I have a friend who's he was previously, he was baptized Catholic, but he's not practicing.
Mm-hmm.
And how can I articulate to him the importance of the sacraments and grace? I think he's kind of fallen into more like a sola scriptura kind of mind frame. And
Okay.
so, kind of the importance of grace and just versus like just knowledge, sort of like a kind of almost like a Gnosticism, like he's discovered some hidden knowledge, but I don't know how to articulate,
Okay.
it's important to receive the sacraments. And
I would point out several things. The first is, and he should be able to agree with this, is that knowledge itself doesn't save you. That's something, if you go to James chapter 2, James at one point says he's talking to an imaginary person, an interlocutor that he's kind of having a debate with, and he says, "You believe that that God is one, that there is one God or God exists. You do well. So do the demons, and yet they shudder at the prospect of God's wrath." So demons know that God exists, but that doesn't stop them from having fear of God's judgment, because it's not going to save them. So merely knowing about God or merely knowing about Jesus is not enough for you to be saved. Otherwise, the demons would be saved. Having said that, we then need to ask, well, so what else do we need besides just knowledge? Now, if your friend has been imbibing Protestant theology, he may come back and say, well, all we need is beyond knowledge is faith. That if we just have faith in God, then and in Jesus Christ, then that will save us. And there are passages that talk about faith in Christ saving us. That's quite true. That is one of the things we need, and that's the fundamental thing we need. However, there are also passages that indicate there are other things we need, like we need to repent of our sins, and we need to be baptized. And there are passages that talk about that. If you look, for example, in Acts chapter 2, in the speech that Peter gives on the day of Pentecost, when people have heard the message of Jesus and they say, what do we need to do to be saved? Peter says, repent of your sins, everyone, and be baptized in the name of Jesus Christ, and God will give you the promise of the Holy Spirit. And so he indicates right there that baptism is an important thing you need to do. It's part of salvation. There are other passages where St. Peter talks about this in his first epistle. In 1 Peter 3, Peter is talking about baptism, and he tells his audience, baptism now saves you. So he can't get much more direct than that. Even if you're on a sola scriptura point of view, you're going to have to do some work if you want to say that means something other than what it says, because what it says is baptism saves you. So baptism is clearly needed for salvation. St. Paul in Romans 6 talks about how those who have been baptized have died with Christ so they might walk in new life. So he indicates we get new life through baptism. There are a variety of other passages you could appeal to. Also, we have passages dealing with the Eucharist, where Jesus, it clearly indicates that the Eucharist is something that we're going to do on a regular basis. He indicates that in Luke chapter 22, where he says, as often as you do this, do it in remembrance of me. Paul quotes the same words in his discussion in 1 Corinthians 10 and 11. And he indicates there it's not simply a memorial, it's also a participation in the body of Christ, according to St. Paul. In John chapter 6, Jesus himself says that unless you eat his flesh and drink his blood, you have no life in you. So we have these New Testament passages indicating that the sacraments are very important. And if you take them in just a straightforward way and don't try to say, oh, well, it means something else, if you just take them in a straightforward way, it makes it real clear that the sacraments are important for our salvation. And you might go a step further with your friend and say, well, why is that? Why would God choose to do it that way? You know, why not just have us saved by a merely mental operation, like knowing or believing? Well, because we're not merely mental creatures. We're not angels. God chose to make us as beings that are both physical and spiritual. And so it's natural for him to accommodate the way he relates to us to our nature, so that he gives us his grace spiritually, often through physical means. That's why when Jesus healed people, he often did it in a physical way, by touching them or by using various physical instruments, like he made mud on one occasion and anointed a man's eyes with it. Oftentimes in the Old Testament, God would also perform miracles through physical means, like Moses' rod or Elisha's bones or things like that. And it's because we're not simply spiritual creatures that God uses physical means to give us his grace, because that corresponds to the way he made us, and it makes it easier for us as physical creatures that have physical senses to relate to God and to know that he's giving his grace to us. And so I would point out some of those things to your friend.
Okay, Al?
Okay, yeah, there was a lot of information. I appreciate it. I think the body, soul, composite. That'd probably be a good argument for him, I think.
Awesome. And you can go back and rewatch the video on YouTube and pick up all the Bible references I mentioned.
Okay, thank you, Jimmy.
Sure thing.
Thanks, Al. Thanks very much. 888-318-7884 is our number, 888-318-7884. I'm just trying to think, Jimmy, of some situations where I can call you your M&Ms now. That's going to be my new thing.
No.
It is. I got points.
I'm going to have
for
to
it, though.
figure a way to retaliate.
You should make a plan about how to defeat me, Jimmy. You should. Hey, by the way, do we have a new Focus up, Nick, or will it be up? When will it be up? Okay, brand new Focus up. Focus is our podcast that we do on occasion when the occasion strikes. And today we have an interview with George Weigel about his brand new book, The Fragility of Order. Just go to Catholic.com/focus. Nick, tell me that I'm right. Is it Catholic.com/focus? I am right. Oh, look at me. Now I'm having a good day. 888-318-7884 is the number. It's open forum, and it's like extra open because Jimmy Akin is here, and he loves to take questions that range far and wide. So if you have questions about the Catholic faith, Catholic life, Catholic people, go ahead and ask them. If you have broader philosophical or moral questions, those are also welcome. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with more with Jimmy Akin on Catholic Answers Live.
Every question is important. Ask yours today on Catholic Answers Live.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
I want you to have such confidence in the Lord that you'll find such hope at seeing the beauty of the Lord, the majesty of God. What did our Lord say, huh? If your sins are as scarlet, oh, what? What's going to happen? They shall be made white as snow.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Hi, this is Trent Horn, and you've probably heard me explain Catholicism to non-Catholic callers on the radio or engage opponents in formal public debates. I've always hoped these interactions would show people how to graciously defend and share our faith. But they're not enough. That's why I've created a weekly podcast that will help Catholics answer the toughest objections against our faith. Every episode of the Council of Trent will provide listeners with a conversation roadmap that will help them share their faith with anyone. Keep in mind that I hate boring lectures. These podcasts will contain entertaining, informative, and practical explanations of the faith, as well as interviews with the best Catholic writers and speakers in the world today. Visit TrentHornPodcast.com today to find out how you can subscribe to my new podcast. That's TrentHornPodcast.com.
How would you like to have the very best and faithful Catholic content delivered daily to your inbox? Articles, video, and audio, apologetics, current events, and commentary. The Catholic Answers Daily newsletter includes all that and more, and it's easy to sign up. Just visit Catholic.com today and look for the newsletter sign-up box on the front page. Keep up with what's happening in the Catholic Church with today's leading apologists, speakers, and writers, delivered daily to your inbox. Catholic Answers Daily. Sign up today at Catholic.com and get better at defending your faith one day at a time.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live, Open Forum. I am Cy Kellett, your host, joined in studio by Jimmy Akin, our senior apologist here at Catholic Answers and the author of A Daily Defense, 365 Days Plus One to Becoming a Better Apologist, which is on sale for 15% off right now at shop.catholic.com because everything is on sale there. It's the big giant spring sale. You just go to shop.catholic.com, you put in spring 18 as your password, or it'll prompt you to put the
promotional code.
Yeah, right. You put that code in and you get 15% off everything, every single thing: books, CDs, DVDs, MP3s, and probably other stuff as well. Let's go to Keith in Bellevue, Nebraska. Oh, listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. All right, Keith, your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hello. Jimmy, I've enjoyed your book, Drama of Salvation. I just bought Fathers Know Best and your new DVD, and I'm very pleased for your promotion to your M&Ms. I'm very happy.
That is a promotion, isn't it?
I do have a question, and even if you have time for even a fast second one, but
what's your question?
I have heard dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of homilies about welcoming the immigrant, welcoming the outsider, Very, very much homilies that are, no fracking, no.
You've heard no fracking homilies, really?
Yes.
Wow.
Take care of the environment, etc. I want to know why there seems to be reluctance by some that they don't want to talk about final judgment. They don't want to talk about the reality of sin, of evil, of purgatory, that there is hell, and that you can't just line up and go to communion just because you're there, twice a year and take it unworthily.
All right, so just to Keith, you heard a lot of the social justice-y kind of stuff, and and you don't feel like you've heard the doctrinal or kind of stuff. So, Jimmy, I guess his question is why?
Well, it wasn't doctrinal stuff in general. It was certain particular doctrines.
Okay.
And in terms of, and he didn't actually ask why does he hear more of the first kind. The way he phrased the question was, why don't I hear this other stuff?
I gotcha.
But I'll veer a little bit from the way the question was asked and say one of the reasons you hear a lot of the first kind of stuff is because it's easy to preach. People, it's a lot of those ideas are very popular in our culture, and priests like to talk about them, or deacons if it's a deacon preaching, or a bishop if it's a bishop preaching. Those ideas are very popular, and that makes them easy to talk about. Also, many of them are subjects that are popular in particular groups, and talking to about those topics in the groups where they're popular is something that is, just on a natural human level, something that is easy to do. It's something that is going to get you points in people's minds. And so it's natural for people to do that. Also, even apart from human calculations, like, just I want to be popular and have people like my preaching, there are additional reasons why some of that is needed. I mean, for example, we have a lot of immigrants in this country, and a lot of them come from Catholic countries where they are historically Catholic, but when they get here, they're in a non-Catholic environment because America is a historically non-Catholic country, and there are lots of churches that are trying to get them out of the Catholic Church, and will even tell them the Catholic Church is evil and you need to leave it. And so, well, it's natural if you're in that situation to want to say, well, let's do what we can to make these people feel welcome. And talking about welcoming immigrants is something that can help accomplish that. So for pastoral reasons, there can be reasons to do exactly that. However, one needs to do other things in one's preaching, and one does need to hit these other topics, including hell and purgatory and sin and judgment, and the fact that you can't just go to communion unless you're properly prepared for it. And so all of those do need to be talked about, but you know what they all have in common? They're not so popular. They're uncomfortable topics. They involve telling people no, and they involve telling people about unpleasant things that don't make you happy to think about, like I'm a sinner and I can experience judgment, and if I don't shape up, I might even go to hell. Those are not pleasant things to think about, and so there's going to be a natural human tendency. It's a tendency that needs to be fought, but there's going to be a natural human tendency to say, these topics would make my audience uncomfortable, and it would cost me points with my audience to talk about these uncomfortable things. It could damage my reputation and make people think that I'm a hostile or mean or closed-minded person or unhip person or whatever it may be. And so there's going to be a natural human tendency to want to avoid talking about the negative and to instead, in the words of the Andrews sisters, accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative. That's a natural human tendency, but it's one that has to be fought. And this is something that has been discussed in recent years by various popes. Pope Benedict I know, and before he was Pope even, would talk about how there's this reluctance on the part of priests today to talk about things like hell and the devil and things like that. And, well, okay, now Pope Francis is talking about it a lot, so there's been some change on that matter. But it hasn't yet trickled down to all of the circles where it needs to. And so this is something where there's a known human tendency. People who preach in churches, whether they're bishops or priests or deacons, they have human natures just like everybody else. They have human temptations, human sins, and sometimes that human fallenness is going to result in them preaching more than they should on some topics and less than they should on others.
Keith, thank you very much. I hope that was helpful. We go now to Sam in Athens, Georgia, listening on Athens Catholic Radio. Sam, you are on with Jimmy Akin. All right, Sam, have we got you there? Whoop. All right.
Maybe not.
We'll come back, Sam. Let's go to Joe in Rochester, New York. Joe, you are on with Jimmy. Excuse me, Joe. I pushed the wrong button. Now you're on with Jimmy Akin, Joe.
Hi.
Hi, Joe.
Hi.
Hi, pleasure to speak to you guys, especially Jimmy Akin. I've been listening to you for years.
Oh, thank you. But
Okay.
Si's very pleasurable to talk to as well. What's your question?
We were recently at an Episcopal funeral. I don't know if they refer to it as a mass or not, but it sure did resemble a Catholic mass to us.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's because it's based on a Catholic mass.
I don't recall if they had a consecration or not. I don't think they did.
Did
but
they?
when
Did they
distributed communion,
Uh-huh.
they said, "Receive the body of Christ."
Mm-hmm.
We did not receive. We just didn't feel comfortable.
Okay.
Going to an Episcopal church. Yeah. Well, do they believe that it is the body of Christ?
Okay. So I would expect that they did have a consecration. That's a standard part of the Episcopalian liturgy. If they didn't have a consecration, then they weren't observing their own liturgical books. Having said that, because apart from exceptional cases, they don't have valid holy orders, such consecrations don't result in a valid consecration of the Eucharist, and that's one of the reasons, not the only reason, but it's one of the reasons why Catholics should not go to receive communion in an Anglican church. Having said that, there is a range of beliefs in the Anglican Communion regarding the nature of the Eucharistic presence. There are some in the Anglican Communion who basically have the Catholic view, and some will even use the term transubstantiation. More commonly, though, they may not use the term transubstantiation, but they will say that they believe Jesus Christ is really present in his body, blood, soul, and divinity. Also, you will have people who kind of walk it a step back from there and will say, well, he's present, but it's kind of in a spiritual way rather than in a bodily way. And then you'll have some people who will even say it's just a symbol. And so one of the things about the Anglican Communion, especially when it comes to the Eucharist, is there is a wide range of views. And it was once put to me by an Anglican, actually an Anglican priest, that one of the things that they kind of do in their tradition on this point is they have some texts that sound very realistic in terms of the real presence and some that sound less realistic, and they just let the two exist in tension with each other and let people make their own decision regarding what they view. So you get a big range of views, some of which are the same as the Catholic view, some of which are very different than the Catholic view.
Okay, Joe?
So what I understand is that the Episcopal Church, they don't have one single belief in what the communion is, or
that's correct.
It looks like
they don't.
That's kind of wild, but anyway, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And one other question: if we did receive,
mm-hmm.
would that be a sin?
Well, objectively speaking, you would be breaking a law in the Catholic Church because canon law requires that Catholics receive communion in the Catholic Church apart from special circumstances, and this is not one of those. And so there would be a legal a law you're breaking, and God gave the church authority to make laws regulating the spiritual lives of its members. That's part of the power of the keys of the kingdom. Also, you might, if you believed incorrectly that Jesus was present when in fact Jesus was not, well, then you would be doing something objectively wrong in that sense as well. Now, what level of culpability you would have for this would depend on your awareness of the moral character of your act and whether you decided to go ahead and do it anyway. If you knew, for example, that God has given the church authority to make rules, and you said, I don't care about this rule, I'm just going to break it anyway, even though I know it's a rule that's backed by God's authority, well, then that would be a sin, because you would be knowingly and deliberately violating a just law that had been established by proper authority.
I hope that is helpful to you, Joe. Thanks very much for that call. We have to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Jimmy Akin, Open Forum on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
Hello, everyone. This is country music artist Colin Ray. Do what I do and keep it right here on Catholic Answers Live.
Today, countless people have drifted away from their faith. You know the story. Faithful parents and grandparents see their children and grandchildren drift away from the church. At first, they just stop going regularly, but they still consider themselves Christian. Then, later, they or their children stop even thinking of themselves as Christian. Eventually, some of them turn bitter and hostile to religion. This sorrowful sequence has played itself out over and over, literally millions of times. Perhaps it's even played out in your own family. The good news is that there's hope. That's why Catholic Answers is releasing a new book by apologist Matt Nelson. It's called Just Whatever: How to Help the Spiritually Indifferent Find Beliefs That Really Matter. The book is designed to help people without firm Catholic beliefs, regardless of where they're coming from. They may only identify as Christians in a kind of nebulous way. They may say that they're spiritual, but opposed to organized religion, or they may be hostile to religion altogether. Whatever their current views, Matt's new book contains winning, persuasive means for helping them get past their current difficulties and see just how important it is to have a life-transforming encounter with God. To make your donation and get a free copy of Just Whatever, visit Catholic.com and click the Just Whatever banner, or call us toll-free at 888-291-8000. That's the Just Whatever banner at Catholic.com, or call toll-free 888-291-8000.
Catholic Answers Live is brought to you in part by CatholicSingles.com, the website for Catholics who want to meet others who share their Catholic values for faith, fellowship, and love. You can learn more at CatholicSingles.com. Catholic Answers Live thanks CatholicSingles.com for their generous support.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool, is a sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
Call now with your question, 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live, Open Forum. Jimmy Akin, our guest this hour. Lots of folks on the phone, so we will go straight back to the phones. We'll start with Brandon in Deer Park, Texas, listening on the Catholic Answers app. Brandon, thanks for downloading the app onto your phone. Your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hello. I just wanted to ask, what is the effect of the act of contrition, when non-Catholics recite it?
Well, so we should explain what the act of contrition is. It's a prayer, and there's not just one act of contrition. Any act by which you express contrition is an act of contrition. And there is a common text, though, often called the act of contrition, which is a prayer that's designed to help you elicit or make an act of contrition. Contrition in this case is understood as perfect contrition, which is sorrow for one's sins based on the supernatural love of God, not simply, for example, based on fear of punishment, although it can include that, but that's not what it is. It's based on the supernatural love of God as the source of all goodness. And if you are a person who is in a state of mortal sin and you make an act of contrition, then that reconciles you with God even before you're able to go to the sacrament of confession. Now, if you know that you need to go to the sacrament of confession, that that's part of God's will for you, then you need to go in a reasonable time, but you're still reconciled with God by the act of contrition even before you go. If you were to say, well, I know this is part of God's will for me, but I don't care, I'm not going to confession, well, then you're not really repenting of your sins, and you don't really have sorrow for them based on the supernatural love of God, and so you don't really have contrition. So contrition includes with it the willingness to go to confession if you know that you need to do that. And so that's how it works with Catholics. Well, if a non-Catholic does the same thing, then he'll be forgiven as well. He'll be reconciled with God even without having gone to confession. In the case of most Protestants, they haven't come to the point where they realize they need to go to confession. Most people in the Protestant community are innocently unaware of that fact, and so they may have heard it, but hearing something is not the same thing as having evidence that would compel you to believe it, or morally obligate you to believe it. And so they are, the technical term in Catholic theology is invincibly ignorant. What that means is they're innocently unaware of their need to go to confession. And so if they're innocently unaware of their need to go to confession, but they otherwise are sorry for their sins because they love God, well, then they'll be reconciled with God on that basis. And in fact, having some kind of act of contrition, not necessarily any particular prayer, but some act of contrition, is the way that most Protestants end up being reconciled with God after they've committed a grave sin.
Okay, Brandon?
That's it.
All right, Brandon, thanks. Thank you very much. Let's go to Tony in Cleveland, Ohio. Tony, you're on with Jimmy Akin. Your question, please.
Hi, this is Tony in Cleveland. I work in a secular work atmosphere, and I was asking a workmate of mine what he was doing this weekend, and he said his son was being confirmed. And I said, well, I thought you weren't Catholic. And he says, I used to be, but I don't believe in organized religion. So what's the best rebuttal for an answer like that?
I would start, now I can imagine some smart aleck remarks like, well, does that mean you believe in disorganized religion? But I don't actually suggest you use those, because that's just going to annoy him and create a new barrier to helping him out. What you want to do is be kind and loving and find out a little bit more information. If he says he doesn't believe in organized religion, then I would say, oh, okay, well, what do you believe? And if he says that let's say he doesn't believe in Christianity anymore, I'd ask why. And then, what stops you from believing in Christianity, or what stops you from being Catholic? And then I'd try to help him work on that as an issue. Now, if he says something like, oh, I believe in Christianity, I believe Jesus is the Son of God, and so forth, I just don't think I need to go to church, well, then I'd say, okay, let's take a look at what Jesus said, because Jesus talks in the Gospels about creating a church. And if you go to Matthew 16, for example, he says to Peter, you're Peter, and on this rock I'm going to build my church, and the gates of hell isn't going to prevail against it. So that means Jesus built a church on Peter. It's still here today. And he also said to Peter, I give you the keys to the kingdom. Whatever you bind on earth is bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth is loosed in heaven. He gave Peter authority to govern this church. So he's created a church that he said is going to survive from the first century. It had Peter as its head. He had authority to govern this church, and that sounds like the Catholic Church, with the Pope as the successor of Peter. If you go to other passages in Scripture, you'll find places where, like in the book of Hebrews and in 1 Thessalonians, Paul says things like obey, and the author of Hebrews says things like obey those who are over you in the Lord and respect your leaders in the church and things like that. So it's clear that that Christians are meant to organize. There's also, like in the book of Hebrews, there's another passage that says, let us not forsake the assembling of ourselves together. Christians are supposed to gather together. And that's, in fact, what the word church means in Greek. The word is ecclesia, means a gathering. And so Christians are supposed to gather together in churches. And so if your friend acknowledges that Jesus is the Son of God and that we ought to listen to him, then we ought to believe in organized religion because Jesus organized one. And so if he's at the point of still believing in Jesus, then you can talk to him in those terms. If he's not, then I would say find out more about what he does believe, what stumbling blocks there may be, and then help him work on those. And we have a lot of resources at Catholic.com that can help you do just that.
Okay, Tony?
Yeah, thank you for your answer. Thanks.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Let's move to Terry in Clearwater, Florida. Terry, you are on with Jimmy Akin. Your question, please, Terry.
Good evening. Several months ago now, you discussed the proper etiquette about passing in front of the Eucharist and then how you should kneel, or genuflect, I'm sorry. But when I was listening, you didn't give any other alternate ways to do it, say, if you are physically unable to genuflect.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just wondering, what is it? The bowing in front?
Yeah. So just to briefly recap for people who may not have heard the original, and frankly, it's not coming to mind, but I know I have talked about this subject before. The way the law was written, every time you passed in front of the Eucharist, unless you were carrying something in a procession, then under ordinary circumstances you were to genuflect, which is make a bow go down on one knee briefly. And it's also known as a bow of the knee, as opposed to a bow of the head or a bow of the body. And these days, my memory, I'd want to check this, but my memory is that it only calls for you doing that at the beginning and end of Mass. But I'd want to check that. Having said that, if you're not physically able, and it doesn't have to be total impossibility, but just if you're not reasonably able, if you don't have the physical mobility needed to do a genuflection, then I would say do what you can. If you're able to make a bow of the body, make a bow of the body. If you're only able to make a bow of the head, make a bow of the head. If you're not able to make a bow of the head, just say a prayer, just some sign of internal reverence towards Christ. So God understands what your physical limitations are, and he doesn't hold you accountable for doing more than what you reasonably can with your body. And so just do whatever you can if you're not able to do what's ordinary.
Okay, Terry?
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate that call. I think we have time. This is going to have to be quick. Let's go to Leela in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, watching on YouTube. Thanks for watching on YouTube in Nova Scotia. Leela, your question for Jimmy.
Hi. So my question is about church history, and I'll try to make this quick.
Okay.
Sometimes Catholics argue that when Jesus said the gates of hell would not prevail against the church, that reformers like Martin Luther and John Calvin, the fact that there needed to be a reformation is like them saying Jesus lied and allowed the gates of hell to prevail against the church. And they say, oh, no, there's always been secret underground groups preserving the so-called true faith, what we believe today and what many Protestants believe today. And they
What's your question, Leila? I need time to be able to answer it.
Yes. Is there evidence that there were historical underground groups that had beliefs very similar to modern day Protestantism, such as
great. Okay, that's a
There have been groups that preceded the Protestant Reformation that had beliefs that were somewhat similar, and in later centuries actually came to be very similar to Protestant beliefs. A group like that would be the Waldensians. There were also the Hussites, followers of a man named Jan Hus. The Waldensians were followers of a guy named Peter Waldo. But these were groups that originated in known times and places. There was no secret Protestant underground spanning 1,500 years. These were just cases, a parallel evolution of ideas that sprang up here and there, just like other belief systems tend to reappear here and there under new guises.
Thank you very much for that call. Thanks to everybody who called. Listen, if you're on the line, stay on the line because we got another hour of open forum coming up after the top of the hour. Trent Horn will be here to take your questions. If you're not on the line and you want to get on, just give us a call, 888-318-7884. Thank you so much, your M&M's, Jimmy Akin. A fine hour with you.
Thank you very much, Cyril Kellett.
Are you going to come up with some kind of title for me?
I'm going to definitely give some thought to it.
Oh, okay, all right. We'll be right back. I'm in trouble now, right after this, in Catholic Answers Live.
What difference does it make who or what you worship or what you believe? Sharing the faith used to make some people mad because it challenged their own strong beliefs. Today, it makes a lot of people yawn because they don't have strong beliefs about anything. Religious indifference is the great spiritual sickness of our age, a product of the relativism that dominates modern culture. This is Matt Nelson, and in my new book, Just Whatever, I'll take down the building blocks of religious indifference one by one. We'll look at the different kinds of indifference you tend to encounter in your friends and family members to see where they come from and why they're seductive. What you believe matters. Find out why and what to do about it in my new book, Just Whatever. You can order your copy of Just Whatever by calling 1-888-291-8000, by visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Are faith and science compatible? The world tells us no, but history shows otherwise. For it is in the Christian West that the pursuit of science has flourished. Our challenge is in reconciling the divide between faith and science in the popular imagination. Join us this September 27th to the 30th as we tackle the topic at Catholic Answers' 5th National Apologetics Conference, Faith and Science. A lively and inspiring conference designed to jumpstart your faith. We've got an all-star lineup of speakers guaranteed to make you think. Catholic scientist theologians, Stacy Trasankos and Father Terrence Ehrman, all of your favorite Catholic Answers apologists, and special keynote speaker Raymond Leo Cardinal Burke. This is where it all begins. Join us this September for a conference that is sure to leave you wanting more. Early bird pricing ends July 2nd. Seats are still available, but they're going fast. Visit CatholicAnswersConference.com or call 1-888-291-8000 today to register. That's CatholicAnswersConference.com.
Catholic Answers is a media ministry that serves Christ by explaining and defending the Catholic faith. We help Catholics grow in their faith, we bring former Catholics home, and we lead non-Catholics into the fullness of the truth. Our goal is to be the most trusted and accessible source for sharing, explaining, and defending the Catholic faith through as many media as possible, from personal contact to the most innovative means of mass communication. Have questions? We've got answers. Catholic Answers. Visit us today at Catholic.com or call us with your questions at 619-387-7200.
God helps those who help themselves. Preach the gospel always. When necessary, use words. We all hear sayings like these, and we assume they come from the Bible, the saints, or famous Christian writers. Nobody can seem to place their origin, but by sheer repetition, they've acquired a halo of truth. In my new book, What the Saints Never Said, I look at over 40 of these well-known sayings and track them back to their original sources. You'll be surprised at what I found. Some are close to what was really said. Many were misattributed or twisted beyond their original meaning, and more than a few of these sayings were simply made up. I hope by setting the record straight, I can make you aware of the theological errors that can lead us away from the faith and offer you authentic quotes from Scripture, saints, and scholars that will draw you closer to our faith. Get your copy of What the Saints Never Said by calling 1-888-291-8000, by visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or by asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Hi, this is Cy Kellett. It's easier than you may think to have a Catholic Answers speaker at your conference or parish event. We've got the speakers. Fired up and knowledgeable Catholic Answers speakers have their bags packed and are ready to come see you. Go to CatholicAnswersSpeakers.com to find out just how easy it is to have a Catholic Answers speaker at your next event. That's CatholicAnswersSpeakers.com. Carlo, get your feet off my suitcase.
Tim Staples, Trent Horn, Cy Kellett, Chris Check, Carlo Broussard. Our on-fire lineup of speakers will inform and inspire your audience to grow in their Catholic faith. For more information on booking a Catholic Answers speaker for your event, visit CatholicAnswersSpeakers.com today.
Welcome to Catholic Answers Live, the program where you participate with your questions about apologetics and evangelization, including the most important theological, spiritual, moral, and social issues facing the world today. Call now with your question for today's guest. Toll free 1-888-31-TRUTH. That's 888-318-7884. Now, from San Diego, Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live, open forum. We love Thursday open forums. It's a lot of fun, and you are welcome to call 888-318-7884 if you have a question about the Catholic faith. And talking with you is one of the reasons we love open forum. We get wonderful guests like Trent Horn this hour on open forum, and also the groovy music plays on Thursday. So at some point during the show today, we'll get the groovy music. Trent Horn is an apologist here at Catholic Answers, a renowned speaker and teacher and pro-life activist, and he's the author of books such as Persuasive Pro-Life and Why We're Catholic. And then the most recent of the Trent books is Things the Saints Never Said.
What the Saints.
I knew it.
Said.
I knew I was going to mess it up. I knew I was.
It's because that my book is about misquoting the saints, and now you got to misquote me.
No, I'm just lame. But have you seen my T-shirt, Trent? Can you see it? I got a really cool T-shirt on it with a very, very handsome head on it, a face right in the middle.
Please don't rub my face.
Oh, sorry. I can pat you on the head. Look, I'm patting you on the head.
I'm still getting used to that. Yes, for all of our radio listeners, you and I, for our Facebook Live people, I've been asked to sport this as well. It is the T-shirt. Premium subscribers to the people who subscribe, I think it's silver level and up, get a free T-shirt when you subscribe to my Council of Trent podcast.
And it's a nice T-shirt as well. So, but you got to tell them where to go for the Council of Trent podcast.
Yeah, to learn more, and if you'd like to subscribe and get your own T-shirt, it's TrentHornPodcast.com. I do general and premium episodes every week about how to better understand, explain, and defend our faith. So it's your little sit-down time each week with me on all kinds of different subjects. And if you subscribe at a gold level or higher, you can actually suggest topics for me to cover and questions for me to answer.
Our number here today, 888-318-7884. Somebody online just asked if I'm wearing a Bob Saget T-shirt. That's not right. Sorry, Trent.
I think there's a lot of other celebrities I think I look like before Bob Saget.
Well, this is a cartoon of you, though.
No, it is a caricature.
It's a caricature, right? And
an animation, yes.
And Full House.
I
has
still think it
looks
more like Fred Savage or Shia LaBeouf than Bob Saget.
Oh, it does kind of look like Shia LaBeouf a little bit. Yeah, that's true.
There you go.
I think your cartoon hair is curlier than your real hair.
Depends how long I let it grow.
Oh,
Depends how long, you never know with that thing.
I want to be a cartoon someday. Trent, we have like every single line full. Do you feel ready to answer questions, or are you just going to goof around all day?
Little column A, little column B.
All right, let's go to column B. Victor in Greenville, North Carolina. You are on with Trent Horn, who is a man and a T-shirt now. Your question for him.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Happy to.
My question is, what is compatibilism, and what's the Catholic view on it?
Okay. Have you ever heard the term, like the context it's being used in, or you just heard the word once and were wondering what it means?
I try to learn it. to me, it seems like it's both determinism and free will.
Yeah, it is. So compatibilism is a view on the question of the relationship between free will and determinism. So the question is essentially, if determinism is true, can people have free will? And now the philosophers and theologians assign different meanings to these terms. So determinism basically means that our actions are caused by something outside of ourselves. For atheistic determinists, now there's different kinds of determinists. There are materialistic or non-religious determinists, people who would say, look, all the universe is just matter colliding in motion, and so everything you do is determined by what the molecules and atoms in your body and outside of you did in the moments leading up to your decision. So they would say everything is fixed. Things could not have been different. If you look back at a past decision you made, it could not have been different because it's decided by all the molecules and atoms in your brain. You don't really get to choose anything. That's one kind of determinism. Another kind of determinism is theological determinism. These are people who believe that God knows the future and he knows everything because he determines what happens. We find this in particular forms of Calvinism, that Calvinists would hold that because God is sovereign, he determines everything that happens. And some will go so far as to say that God causes us not just to do good, but also to do evil. Everything that happens, both good, evil, and morally neutral, is caused by God. So there's non-religious determinism and theological determinism. And free will, of course, is the idea, and of course people define free will in different ways to try to have their cake and eat it too, but free will traditionally is defined as the ability to act without being determined by something outside of oneself, the ability to choose, to not be constrained by outside forces. So that's free will and determinism. So the question is, can you have free will if determinism is true? Now, incompatibilists will say, no, you can't. If determinism is true, then you don't have free will. So there are people like Sam Harris, the atheist Sam Harris. He's an incompatibilist. He says, look, if the world's determined by material laws, there's no free will. Free will is just an illusion. Most religious people I know, most Christians, would actually agree with Harris and agree with other atheistic incompatibilists and say, yeah, if determinism is true, we don't have free will. But guess what? We do have free will. So determinism's not true. Those are the incompatibilists. Now, compatibilists will say, well, actually, you can have your cake and freely choose to eat it too. A compatibilist will say, even if our actions are determined by God or they're determined by molecules in motion, even if they are determined, we still have free will. And usually in order to accomplish this, they'll redefine free will. They'll say, well, free will means that you are able to do what you want. So even if you couldn't have done anything differently because you're determined, as long as you wanted to do it, you're free. So the compatibilists will say, yeah, even if you're determined, hey, as long as you want it, if the molecules in your brain or God causes you to want to do this, you're still free. I would say that the Catholic tradition, if we look at how the church defines things like freedom, would make it very difficult, if not impossible, to hold to compatibilism. The Catechism defines freedom this way. It's in paragraph 1731. It says, freedom is the power rooted in reason and will to act or not to act, to do this or that, and so to perform deliberate actions on one's own responsibility. So when we read in the Catechism and other Catholic documents, freedom is defined more so in the ability to do or not do certain things, not merely to do what we want. And so if we are caused to do this or that by something outside of us, then it would seem we are determined and we're not really free. So the church would hold that man has free will. We are able to, for example, choose to sin or not sin. We are able to choose to accept or reject God's offer of salvation. And because we can freely choose to do things, we can be held morally accountable for those choices. I would say that that's a severe problem in both for atheists who deny free will and for Christians like Calvinists who deny free will. Because look, if you can't freely choose to do something, if you're caused to do something by something outside of you, how can you be morally responsible for your actions any more than, if Darren walks in on Cy and, picks up his hands and flails them around and cuts off the computer and the calls, that's not Cy's fault. He's being determined. He's flailing around. You're freely flailing around right now, Cy.
Darren was doing that.
Oh, okay. The Darren made me do it.
Yeah.
So that would be, I guess, to wrap all of that up. Before I could go a little bit more with that, but is that helpful for now, Victor, to understand compatibilism?
Yeah, that's helpful because it did sound confusing to me. How you explained it, I kind of figured it was one of those try to have your cake and eat it too.
That's right. So just to summarize, the question is, if we are determined by things outside of us that make us do certain things, do we have free will? Incompatibilists will say, no, we don't. There's determinists like Sam Harris who say, yeah, if you're caused by something, you don't have free will, it's an illusion. I would say that most Christians even would say, no, we're not determined. We can choose. We have free will. We're not determined. The compatibilists will say, look, as long as you want to do something, even if God or molecules make you do it, you still have free will. But I think they can only achieve that by redefining free will into something that it really is not. So I hope that's helpful. And a good resource that covers this and other related topics would be Edward Fazer's book, Philosophy of Mind. And I think that would be a good, because a lot of this deals with the mind and cognition and what we're able to choose or not to. So that might be a good book to read on the subject. And thank you very much for calling in.
Thanks, Victor. We have to take a break. We'll be right back with more Trent Horn, Open Forum Day here on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
Hi, this is Trent Horn. Did you know that you can have me and other Catholic Answers speakers headline your next conference or parish event? Go to CatholicAnswersSpeakers.com to get all the information you need to book one of our dynamic speakers today. That's CatholicAnswersSpeakers.com.
If only evangelization was easy. But the truth of the matter is that most of the time, it's not. Talking about the Catholic faith is enough of a challenge even before dealing with the roadblocks that keep people from listening with an open mind. Apologist Carlo Broussard recognized that as he wrote Prepare the Way, a guide to step-by-step strategies that readers can use to break down those barriers to the very existence of God and religious truth, barriers to basic Christian beliefs, and barriers to the distinctive teachings and claims of the Catholic Church. Don't let obstacles get in your way. Learn how to overcome them. Order your copy of Prepare the Way today by calling 1-888-291-8000, logging on to the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Interested in visiting Catholic Answers? If you live in or plan to visit beautiful Southern California, we'd love to have you come by for a tour. You can meet our apologists and staff, visit our chapel, and watch the broadcast of Catholic Answers Live. To arrange a tour, call us at 619-387-7200 or email us at visit@catholic.com.
St. John Paul II stated that, for the disciple of Christ, evangelization is a duty, an obligation of love. And the Catechism of the Catholic Church states that evangelization is necessary for salvation.
So we know we're called, but how do we do it?
St. Paul Street Evangelization can help. To learn more, contact us at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest this hour is author, speaker, and apologist Trent Horn. Trent's latest book is Stuff That the Saints Never Got Around to Saying. Is that the correct?
More or less.
Oh, you're just giving up on me now. Okay.
No, I need to respect your cultural adaptation of my book.
Oh,
so.
Wow, that is that is very millennial of you. Thank you so much for being so millennial with me. Let's go to Michael in Lafayette, Indiana, watching on Facebook. Thanks for watching on Facebook, Michael. Your question for Trent Horn.
Hello, peace be with you.
And with your spirit.
Jesus Christ outright rejects the food laws in Mark chapter 7. So is it reasonable to assume that these food laws from the Old Testament are more human than they are divine?
What do you mean when you say that Jesus outright rejects the food laws in Mark 7?
He says that it's not what you put into your mouth that defiles you, but what comes from your heart that defiles you.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, what Jesus is talking about here in Mark chapter 7 is the purity requirements and whether they still are required and whether there's something that the people of God is imposing on the people of God in order to keep them pure. It still is something that was true that, yeah, what you eat doesn't change the nature of your soul, for example. However, God can require you to perform certain behaviors, for example, to act in certain ways. And so you can incur punishment or sin by disobeying God if one of those requirements could even include something that's dietary. So the question becomes, are these dietary laws, when are they binding for the people of God? And Jesus, in coming to atone for the sins of the world and making the grace of God available for all people, is expanding God's grace beyond the Jewish people. He's beginning with the Jewish people. He's born into a Jewish family, born into God's chosen people. But throughout the New Testament, Jesus is also going out to the Gentiles, and eventually the gospel will be proclaimed to all nations. And so in order to bring more people into the family of God, in order to bring more people into the new covenant, what Jesus is saying here and what will be carried out through the church is the understanding that the kosher laws, the Hebrew word kashrut, were only binding upon the people in the Old Testament. They were required so that the Israelites could be distinguished from their Canaanite neighbors, that the way they worshiped, the way they dressed, and in particular the way they ate, were something that set them apart from their pagan neighbors to prevent this kind of pagan cultural assimilation. However, while these kosher laws were good at keeping the Jews apart from non-Jews so that they wouldn't be taken over by these other pagan cultures, they also would keep other pagans, other people away from God. And so now, in the fullness of time, when Jesus had become man, at the time where the Jewish people were not facing the same threats that they did earlier in the Old Testament, Jesus was able to reveal that these kosher laws were no longer binding upon the people of God. And this is what we see in Mark chapter 7 later, and this is reaffirmed in Acts chapter 15, to see what God does require of people and what he does not. And if you'd like a little bit more on that, we've got a few articles actually on just that subject at our website at Catholic.com. So if you want to go deeper in there, I would check that out.
Thanks, Michael. Let's go to Ken in Bismarck, North Dakota, listening on EWTN. Ken, your question for Trent Horn.
Yes, I'm just wondering about the history of the Roman collar that priests wear. How long has that been around? And like the symbolism behind it, and who designed it, or anything?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Trent, the Roman collar. We see it, but we never think about where it came from. Where did it come from?
Sure, and clerical collars, you can find them outside of Catholic clerics. You can see them among Anglicans, other Protestants. Different ministers will wear collars, and there's different theories about where they developed. Catholic priests probably began wearing them as just a part of fashion that developed in Italy, I think in the 16th and 17th centuries, that it was a collar that would come up from the undershirt over a cassock that was being worn. Later, Protestants would adapt this, and the more traditional removable collar, I think, was developed by Scottish Protestants in the early 19th century. And so, this is just a way of that clerics and those who have holy orders, those who assume the title of pastor or cleric, have, in any religion really, have always dressed distinctly to identify that they are separate in calling and mission from the laity. It's very, very rare in religions for the leaders of religions, for priests, pastors, whoever it may be, to not be distinguished in some special way from the laity. And so this is just one way that, before the collar, there were vestments, other things that were worn. This is just another fashion that developed over time. But oftentimes fashions that develop, symbolism can be drawn out of it upon deeper meditation. So there's a few different symbolisms for the collar that priests wear, the Roman collar. One is the idea that the collar represents bondage to God, like being a slave, like slaves would wear collars in the ancient world. So St. Paul himself, in many Bibles, the word servant is used, and servants and slaves are pretty similar classes in ancient Rome. But we think of servants like, like a butler, like Jeffrey from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or something. But when Paul says he's a servant of Christ, he's not somebody that goes there for great pay. The word is doulos, slave. So Paul says, I am a slave for Christ. And so some priests will see the collar as being, I'm enslaved, but to God, to Christ, to serve him in everything that I do. So that's one. Others just signifies, this distinction from laity, as I said earlier. And I've heard some people say that because it can sometimes be uncomfortable to wear around the neck, it can be a kind of form of penance to offer up each day for the vocation one is chosen. So that would be the general understanding of the Roman collar, at least from what I've heard.
Ken, thank you very much. There are a load of calls, so I'm just moving quickly through them. So Trent will have a chance to talk to as many folks as he can. Linda in Houston, Texas, you are on with Trent Horn. Your question, Linda. Hey, Linda? We'll come back to you, Linda. Hang on. We'll come back to you. I know you probably had errands to run. Angel in Anaheim, California, watching on Facebook. Angel in Anaheim, that's the perfect place for someone named Angel to live.
Yes, it is.
I wonder if people around the country know that that's where the Angels play, but I don't know. It's a baseball team. Angel, your question for Trent.
So the question I have for Trent is, how would you answer, or how can you help me answer, when someone says that the church is misogynist because they don't let women be ordained, or maybe because, the Bible says that women have to be subject to men or to the husband?
Yeah, sure.
How can you lead me to that?
Yeah. And those are two separate issues. One would be an understanding of Bible difficulties. There are passages, that's the passage in Ephesians chapter 5. That's the one where I call it the elbowing passage, because when people sit in church and it's read and it says, wives be subject to your husbands as Christ, wives be subject to your husbands, the husbands will elbow their wives. But then in Ephesians chapter 5, St. Paul also says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And Christ demonstrated his love for the church by dying for the church, by offering his very life for the church, everything that he was offering in an excruciating death on the cross. So then the wives get to elbow the husbands back when they hear that. So I think this is to understand that what Pope St. John Paul II, I think he talked about this in Mulieris Dignitatem, on the dignity of women, that here when it's talking about wives being subject to their husbands, it's not for them to be mere doormats and their husbands are tyrannical, but to allow their husbands to be spiritual leaders, not ones, once again, that are tyrants, but ones that can imitate Christ and plot out a plan for the family to lead them to holiness in cooperation with their wives. So when we see words like submission, to submit under, others have drawn out from this the idea that submission is to be under the mission of your spouse, of your husband. And so this complementarian nature here is to see that men and women, husbands and wives, offer different things to marriage. And I think that what's unfortunate is that in the world we live in, people think that if two things are different, then they are going to be unequal. And so that's why you have this strange thing happening now with gender theory, where anyone who says, well, men are different than women, especially if people say that men, for example, are better at certain skills or understanding certain fields, then that's just you'll just hear an uproar. What's funny is if you say things like, well, women tend to have better verbal skills and understanding of verbal relationships and understanding relationship cues, things like that. If you talk about women, where women cognitively excel over men, there's much less uproar that happens. So people will try to say that there are really no differences between men and women, that they're all socially conditioned, that we condition little boys to act like boys, girls to act like girls, and that men and women, there are really no differences between us. Even biologically, those don't matter. And so in order to preserve the equality of men and women, well, we have to say that there really is no difference. But that's silly. Of course there are differences. I mean, you even see this in other animals. When you take chimpanzees, little boy and girl chimpanzees and give them toys. The girl chimpanzees play with the dolls, and the boy chimpanzees take the trucks and bash them together. And we're not socializing chimpanzees. This shows deep down maleness and femaleness are real, and they have differences to complement one another. And so what God teaches us through Scripture and tradition is that men and women complement one another with different though equal roles. Different though equal. And Christ has called for men to serve in the role of being priest. And the church does this. You can say, well, look, the church does this because Jesus did not call women. He could have. He bucked cultural trends. He associated with women, but he only called men to be apostles. And so you can say, look, the church doesn't hate women. We're just doing what Jesus did. We're imitating Jesus. I'd also add that another theological reflection from this is that Christ became human, and specifically he became man. That's important to Christ's identity as a human. And so when the priest stands in the person of Christ, I don't know how it would work for a female priest to be in the person of Christ and say, this is my body, when she has a female body, not a male body. So is that kind of a helpful start?
Yes, it is. My last kind of question, or kind of adding to that, would be, how can we say, or how can we help someone that still thinks that the church sees women as less than a man?
Here's my quick rejoinder to that. You can ask them, what creature in all of the universe has the highest place of all of God's creation? What creature has the highest place? It's a woman. It's a woman, our Blessed Mother. Ask them, how many churches do you know? How many churches do you know around you? Who are they named after? Usually, it's a female saint. So the church doesn't hate women. The Catholic Church exalts women right and left. So that might be something to bring up.
Oh, sorry. We'll be right back after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live.
Can you trust the basis of the Christian faith? The Christian faith is under constant attack today in numerous ways, but the attack that does the most damage is the one that asks a deceptively simple question. What if your faith is based on a myth? The skeptics come with arguments to cast doubt in numerous ways, often attacking the reliability of the New Testament and the Gospels. And the sad news is that most people don't know how to answer these charges. The good news is that there are answers to each and every one of them, good solid answers. That's why Catholic Answers Studios has just released Jimmy Akin's new DVD, The Dawn of Christian History. With his characteristic wit and passion as a master storyteller, Jimmy takes you through an exciting detective story that reveals how history supports the Christian faith. Order your copy of The Dawn of Christian History today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
As the legend goes, the Protestant Reformation began when Martin Luther nailed a list of his grievances with the Catholic Church to the door of All Saints Church in Wittenberg, Germany. But do you know the whole story? In Catholic Answers' brand new documentary, The Protestant Revolution, you will hear from top apologists Tim Staples, Jimmy Akin, Carlo Broussard, Trent Horn, and Steve Weidenkopf as they expose the errors of Martin Luther and of the other so-called reformers. This DVD will give you a clearer understanding of our Protestant brothers and sisters, and you will be better equipped to engage them about what separates us and about what unites us. Order your copy of The Protestant Revolution today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting shop.catholic.com, or by asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
EWTN, helping people grow in their love and understanding of God.
I just wanted to thank you for your show. It's made such a huge difference in my faith life, because if you don't know why you're doing things and you're just going through the motions, it's totally pointless. But if you know why, it's infinitely meaningful. So you really helped me make a 180.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Yep. That's right. There it is. Groovy music. Thanks for the groovy music, Nick. Groovy music means It's Thursday. It's open forum, and we're having fun. 888-318-7884 is the number. I am Cy Killett, your host. Our guest this hour is Trent Horn, and we just have a stack of questions from callers about the Catholic faith. And that's what. Oh, by the way, I don't know if I've mentioned this enough today. You don't have to be Catholic to call. Non-Catholics are more than welcome. Just dial 888-318-7884, and we'll do our very best to get you on with Trent. We go now to Linda in Houston, Texas. Linda, you are on with Trent Horn. Are you there, Linda?
Yes, I am, and thank you for taking my call.
Happy to.
And I have a question, actually a couple. What happened is, I have my sons, I baptized them in Catholic Church because I'm Catholic. I'm Italian and all that. And also they took their first communion in a Catholic church and all of that. But then once they started going in middle school, they started meeting some friends. And they took them in a non-denominational church, pretty large non-denominational church here in Houston, Texas. And they liked it so much that they kept on going there. And I didn't think anything about it until recently that I noticed that they don't desire to come to a Catholic church and take the sacraments. They say, oh, it's not necessary to take the sacraments, and so they start liking the non-denominational church, this large non-denominational church. How can I do to get them back to the Catholic Church?
Right, sure. Linda, how old are your sons?
Well, now they are, one is 23 and one is 24.
Oh, okay. So they're not, because this started like in middle school. They met all these people,
yeah.
But they're not middle schoolers anymore. They're adults.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But I just now realized the damage because I didn't think much of it, and I said, well, because on Christmas and Easter we were going to Catholic church, and they took the communion. But now that I really want to go every Sunday, they said, no, we're going to the other.
Well, Linda, I think that, and once again, thank you for sharing the story, because this, I hope, will be a cautionary tale for other parents who are listening that, you want your children to be around good people. And oftentimes, our Protestant brothers and sisters, they're very good people, very virtuous. They understand the Bible very well. At least they recite it very well. And, it can be good, wholesome fun we want our children to be a part in, that these are, people who aren't going to be doing drugs or bad activities. And so we think, well, what's the harm? But the problem is they're not just going to be playing football and eating pizza and watching movies. They're also going to have conversations. They're going to be taught things at a Protestant youth group or a Protestant church that contradict our faith, that contradict what we believe. So I think that what's important here is to first provide that foundation, do whatever you can to find other children for your own children who are Catholic, who are within youth groups, Life Teen, whatever it may be, to have that wholesome fun, but in a Catholic environment. Now, Linda, if in your case you say, well, they're grown up, they're adults, they're 23, 24, they think, I don't have to go to church, what do I do? Here, I think what you have to do is always be willing to offer the olive branch, always have that invitation, and it's going to be kind of a slow and steady path to have conversations to help them come back into the church. So offering them, hey, come, I'd really enjoy if you could come with me whenever you want. The door is always open. I'd love for you to join me when you're home, when you're in town. Also there to offer gifts that they might find to be interesting, like a book on the Catholic Church. My book, Why We're Catholic, might be a nice read for them. You can say, hey, here's a book that maybe there's things you heard about the Catholic Church that you disagree with that aren't actually true. You might want to recommend my book, Why We're Catholic, because I wrote it for people like your sons who aren't practicing their faith anymore to read. I wrote it just for them. And then finally asking them a lot of questions like, well, how do you choose a church to go to? It's non-denominational. Which church do you pick? How do you know it's the right church? Do you think Jesus started a church? Who founded that church you're a part of? Because it was founded by somebody 10, 20, 30 years ago, and that came from a church that was founded 100 years ago. Only the Catholic Church can trace its founding all the way back to Jesus and the apostles. And so shouldn't we be faithful to the church that Jesus founded? So you kind of have to have these conversations, be open, inviting them, give them little books and gifts to sow the seeds, and then ask these little questions about what church they choose and why in particular they have problems with the Catholic Church. and then you got to go get the answer. So I can't give you an easy answer. It's just kind of a process. But I think it's one I'll ask our listeners to pray for you as you go through. So is that a helpful start?
Yes, it just I did not realize. It just slipped to me. I did not realize the damage because I always thought, oh, don't worry, they're gonna come back to Catholic. We're gonna take the communion. But now it's like, no, we like that one better. And so it really damaging if you don't raise them all the way without interruption into the Catholic Church. I really regret to have done that.
Sure, I understand. And Linda, don't hang up. I want you to stay on the line just to make sure we get this good resource to you and your sons. I'm going to have the call screener get your address, and we will send you a copy of my book, Why We Are Catholic. And I think that could be very helpful for you to read first and then to pass it on to one of your sons. So stay on the line, and our call screener will get your address to send you a copy of Why We're Catholic.
Thanks, Linda. Let's go to Nick in Salt Lake, Utah, listening on EWTN. Nick, your question for Trent Horn.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. It's just a quick follow-up to Jimmy's act of contrition question.
Yes.
If I say an act of contrition and have that and as perfect in my heart as I can before Mass, but I don't have the opportunity to go to confession, am I okay to receive communion if I know and I've done that, and I also know that later that day or the next day I will be able to go to confession? Or is that something that only the priest can authorize you to do, or what do you recommend?
Sure. This is covered in the Code of Canon Law in paragraph 916, and this is what it says. So I think all the elements are important to break down. It says, a person who is conscious of grave sin is not to celebrate Mass, so that's the priest, or receive the body of the Lord without previous sacramental confession, unless there is a grave reason and there is no opportunity to confess. In this case, the person is to remember the obligation to make an act of perfect contrition, which includes the resolution of confessing as soon as possible. So what does this mean? Well, if you make an act of perfect contrition. Now, people often confuse this. They say, if I did a perfect act of contrition, am I okay? No. It's not saying the act of contrition perfectly. It's being perfectly contrite. And what that would mean is that you are sorrowful for sin because of a love for God and how sin damages your relationship with God. Your sorrow is done out of a love of God. Imperfect contrition is sorrow that arises out of your punishment. So, it's like the kid who, is sorry because he doesn't want to get grounded, imperfect contrition. He's sorry because he hurt his parents' feelings, perfect contrition. So if you make an act of perfect contrition, you're sorrowful for your sins because out of a love for God, then you can either receive the Eucharist or celebrate Mass if there is a grave reason for you to do so and there's no opportunity to confess. So I would say, let's say for a priest, if he's in a state of mortal sin, he may have a grave reason because, people have come to the church now to celebrate Mass and no one can substitute for him. So he might have to make an act of perfect contrition to fulfill this just obligation to those who have come to receive the sacraments. Also, same for receiving the Eucharist if you're in danger of death, for example. Or there's other situations, for example, that if you are, let's say maybe you're at a wedding, you're the bride or the groom or one of the people who's an element of public focus and people know you're Catholic, and you worry that if you don't receive communion, people will think that, you're in mortal sin. Oh, what'd this person do? Oh, and you might worry that you could make scandal or hurt your own reputation. It's possible there that could arise to a level of gravity. But if it's merely that, I haven't had a chance to go to confession yet and I can always go in a few days or a week, I'm not sure I don't know if that would really qualify as a grave reason to receive the Eucharist. I would say that if we are in a state of mortal sin, we should do our best to be mindful, as we read in 1 Corinthians 11, about discerning the body and blood of the Lord. And the receiving it in grave sin by making a act of perfect contrition should only be done if there's a grave reason to do so. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. What I mostly run into is if you go to a parish where the priest doesn't offer the sacrament of confession often, and if you go knowing, hey, this is a time he's usually there, but he happens to not be doing it again or something, and it's like, I went early before Mass in hopes he was going to be there, and he's not. Yeah.
But,
yeah, and I think that's something where I would recommend talking to a spiritual director about and praying. But I do think that there should be, the Lord should have some understanding that if a person has made every reasonable effort to avail themselves of the sacrament of confession, and it's simply not possible, and perhaps they worry about their own spiritual welfare because they're not receiving the Eucharist, that might be something to consider. But I would say even in those cases, you never do harm in not receiving the Eucharist. I mean, you only have to receive the Eucharist once a year. I would recommend talking to a spiritual director or a priest about those particular incidents when they arise. And I, in these situations, would usually just err on the side of caution. So always remembering that God is merciful, but to still be mindful of sins and what they do to our relationship to Him. So I hope that's helpful.
And thank you, Nick. We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Trent Horn Open Forum on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
We'll be right back with more great answers from Trent today on Catholic Answers Live.
God helps those who help themselves. Preach the gospel always. When necessary, use words. Sayings like these are such a part of tradition that we assume they come from the Bible, the saints, or famous Christian writers. Even though nobody can seem to place their origin, by sheer repetition, they have acquired a halo of truth. In What the Saints Never Said, Trent Horn takes over 40 of these well-known but actual dubious sayings and attempts to track them to their true source. The result? He finds some that are close to what was really said, many that were misattributed or twisted beyond their original meaning, and more than a few that were just plain made up. By setting the record straight, Trent roots out theological errors that can lead us away from Christian truth and offers authentic quotes from Scripture, saints, and scholars that will draw you closer to that truth. Get your copy of What the Saints Never Said today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Looking for an on-fire Catholic speaker for your event? Catholic Answers speakers will inform and inspire your audience to grow in their Catholic faith. For more information on booking a Catholic Answers speaker, visit CatholicAnswersSpeakers.com today.
How would you like to have the very best and faithful Catholic content delivered daily to your inbox? Articles, video, and audio, apologetics, current events, and commentary. The Catholic Answers daily newsletter includes all that and more, and it's easy to sign up. Just visit Catholic.com today and look for the newsletter sign-up box on the front page. Keep up with what's happening in the Catholic Church with today's leading apologists, speakers, and writers, delivered daily to your inbox. Catholic Answers Daily. Sign up today at Catholic.com and get better at defending your faith one day at a time.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. We're heading up towards the top of the hour, and it is open forum, and lots of people have questions, so I'm just going to move through the questions as quickly as I can, give Trent Horn, our guest this hour, a chance to get to as many as he can before we have to go for the afternoon. We go now to Brian in Cleveland, Ohio, listening on 1260 The Rock. Brian, your question for Trent.
My question for Trent is this. I'm wondering how you deal with, speak with, perhaps even debate Catholic friends who subscribe to the notion of relativism, and it usually applies to that they're lax with regard to abortion, euthanasia, to gay marriage, and the belief that everybody's entitled to their own truth. And I say that it doesn't matter if you've got 1,000 people with 1,000 different truths. They're just one truth, and that's the way it is. But they say, well, it's not me that would do these things, but I think people have the right to make those decisions. And how should I respond to that?
Okay, so let me see, Brian, if I understand your question. You're saying you have friends who are Catholic. Now they say, make sure I understand you correctly, they say they wouldn't have an abortion, they wouldn't commit euthanasia or celebrate same-sex marriage, but they can't tell other people that they aren't allowed to do those things. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Is it correct? Yes?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. Well, I think what I would do is just try to pick a moral issue where they would agree that we ought to tell other people that they can and cannot do certain things. Because it seems to me that what they're concerned about is imposing aspects of their religion upon other people. And you could say, well, I'd understand that. I mean, I wouldn't want someone compelling me to worship the God of Islam, for example, and to deny Jesus when I should be allowed to worship Jesus. That's my freedom to do that. We should have religious freedom. So you can say, yeah, there's certain aspects of our faith we should not impose on others, but there are other aspects of our faith that are not just divinely revealed truths. They're truths of natural law. They're things that any person, any reasonable person, when they think about right and wrong and good and evil, should just know. And if they don't know, they have some kind of cognitive defect then. The fact is, all people deep down should know these basic moral truths and ought to abide by them. Reasonable people should, and good people should do what they can to stop evil people from doing these things. So I would just try to pick the most uncontroversial examples you can think of. To ask them, look, the Catholic Church says that genocide is wrong, says that human trafficking is wrong, that rape is wrong, that, picking examples that almost everybody agrees, yeah, they're wrong. There's some people who might think, well, they're not wrong, or they're not wrong in my case. Don't you think we ought to, as a church, as reasonable people, pass laws to protect innocents from these kinds of harms? That's another great question, actually, you can bring to them and say, look, do you think, because they're worried about imposing our view on people who disagree, but the problem is you pick abortion, euthanasia, even same-sex marriage, these other people are imposing things too. Because you can say, look, shouldn't we protect unborn children from being imposed upon by the violence of abortion? Shouldn't we protect the elderly and disabled from being imposed upon by the threat of euthanasia or assisted suicide? So you could say to them, look, everybody, even with so-called same-sex marriage, somebody's going to impose and say, this is what marriage is, everybody's got to believe that. Even if it's the other side, they say it's just two people, it doesn't have to be a man and woman. Well, they have imposed that view on others, and people who disagree, people who teach different things about sexuality and sexual orientation. In California, it's possible that books that advocate that one ought to change their sexual behavior could be banned. People who conduct seminars on these subjects, like myself, could be the subject of criminal penalties. So I would just bring them to that. Try to pick uncontroversial examples of things that everybody knows are wrong. Some people disagree. Shouldn't we persuade or at least pass laws to stop those grave moral wrongs? And then are abortion, euthanasia, redefining marriage, are those grave moral wrongs? And then take the imposing angle, but turn it to the victims, like the unborn child, the elderly, the disabled, children when marriage is redefined so they don't have a natural relationship with their father and mother. So that might be, if they're worried about imposing, try the innocent victim that abortion and all these other things imposes on those innocent victims. So are those two helpful strategies when these topics come up?
That is helpful. I guess I took the wrong tack today because I brought up the issue of that poor toddler, Alfie Evans, and I said, you're allowing you're for this, and this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like. Yes. And I guess that was the wrong way to approach it.
Well, the problem is they may say with the case of Alfie Evans that, well, I think the parents are cruel and the state should just let this child die naturally, but he's not dying naturally. Actually, he's surviving without a ventilator, and that's a whole different case. But that's why it's important when we engage in moral reasoning with people. Like when I talk about abortion, that's why you'll hear me with callers on this show. They'll say, I think abortion should be right because some women are too poor. I'll say, well, do you think a woman who lives in poverty should be able to kill a 2-year-old? And I pick that because it's uncontroversial. Almost everybody agrees it's wrong. Okay, so we agree we should make laws to keep 2-year-olds from being killed who are in poverty. Why not for 2-month-olds in the womb? So when we engage in moral reasoning, it always kind of runs the same way. We have disputed issue X, abortion, homosexuality, contraception, whatever it may be. Disputed issue X. You and I disagree. The Alfie Evans case, we disagree on this. Well, let's talk about case Y. undisputed case Y. You and I, my dear friend, my opponent in this discussion, we agree in case Y what to do. Don't kill 2-year-olds. Don't euthanize children with mild cognitive defects. We agree, but guess what? Case Y is actually similar. Undisputed case Y is similar to disputed case X. Since we know what to do in the undisputed case of killing toddlers or euthanizing people with Down syndrome, whatever it may be, if those principles carry over to where we disagree, like abortion or euthanasia or marriage, well, guess what? Those principles will carry the day, and you should actually agree with me. That's kind of just how you reason morally. It's a path it's an argument by analogy I find to be helpful, and one I'd recommend in yours and everyone else's future discussions on different subjects like that.
Thank you very much for that call, Brian. We're going to move on now to Dustin in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. Dustin, thanks for listening in Canada. Your question for Trent Horn.
Hey, guys. Appreciate you taking my call. Love the show. I've been in discussion with Tim Staples about possibly being a guest one day, former Muslim and Protestant convert, so I got that on my bucket list.
Wait, you were a former Muslim and Protestant?
Yeah, I was brought up, nominal Christian, Protestant, became a Muslim convert in university, and then returned to the Catholic faith into which I was baptized as an infant. Sure. So God's done quite a work in me.
Sure thing. Great, what's your question?
Yeah, but anyways, just really quick, I know we're running short on time. My question is this. St. Paul has a prohibition against, or an admonition against men having long hair, saying it's against nature. But then in our popular statuary and iconography, both East and West, we find Jesus depicted with long hair. So I was just wondering, and especially the Shroud of Turin, I mean, there's a lot of scientific validity, in that whole thing. So I was wondering, how do we reconcile St. Paul's admonition with our popular iconography, statuary, and the Shroud of Turin image? And that's my question.
Right. And this comes in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. And that is where St. Paul is talking about the roles of men and women. Throughout in the letter to the Corinthians, Paul has to deal with a lot of issues related to sexual morality. Corinth was a port city in the western part of Greece, and it still is today. So merchant capital, people going in and out, a lot of different businesses, some more illicit and prurient, if you will. Different things that are going on for all the sailors passing in and out. And so Paul was dealing with these things. In fact, in 1 Corinthians 5, he was dealing with a member of the congregation who was having relations with his own mother. I think it may have been his stepmother. He was having relations with his father's wife. And so he was trying, and people weren't objecting to this stuff. They weren't objecting to it. And so he has to go, and in 1 Corinthians 6, he talks about the man-betters and those who lying, the terms essentially for homosexual behavior, going through trying to underscore the proper relationships between men and women and the proper roles for men and women. And so in 1 Corinthians 11:14, Paul is talking about both customs, like women covering their heads, and how men should behave, but it goes back to our ultimate identities as men and women created in the image of God. So 1 Corinthians 11:14, he says, "Does not nature itself teach you that for a man to wear long hair is degrading to him, but if a woman has long hair, it is her pride, for her hair is giving to her as a covering." We have to be careful about the word long. What is long hair? If somebody watching in the 1950s, somebody might say that if your hair isn't as short as like Johnny Unitas or something, like a military buzz cut, you got long hair, you beatnik. But then when the hippies come around, it can be a little bit longer. For Middle Eastern customs, hair might be long going down over the ears. Some statues and depictions of Jesus, though, have long hair that's more reminiscent of later Roman styles or of later Renaissance styles, not what we would have seen in first century Palestine. But even there, even if you had hair going down to your shoulder, that may not have been long in Jesus' time. Long hair might be like hair that goes to the middle of the back or down to the waist. And it's natural for women to be able to grow their hair. Many women, not the majority maybe, but a fair number are able to grow their hair to the middle of their back or down to the waist. But for men, they are not able to do that. So a man who is engaging in hairstyle or dress or anything to try to imitate women might be confusing his role as a man created in the image of God and something that degrades him, that he should let nature teach him how men are naturally ordered. So that might be, I would say, is one way to understand the passage. And thanks, and I'm like to say that we're thankful to hear how God has worked in your life also in your conversion. And yeah, I'd love to have you on the show or maybe my podcast, The Council of Trent. Would enjoy hearing about your story.
Thanks, Dustin. You cannot come on Catholic Answers Live and steal guests. That's not a... Who told you that was acceptable?
Well, can't we just borrow them like an exchange program?
I suppose that, yeah, we could probably have foreign exchange. Yes, they could. All right, we can loan out Dustin to you. Say again where people can go to the podcast, because we're both wearing the podcast shirts.
We're both
today.
wearing the shirt. Yeah, the podcast is at TrentHornPodcast.com, or you can go to iTunes, Google Play to subscribe. But if you want premium content, go to TrentHornPodcast.com.
Thank you very much, Trent. And don't forget that our spring sale continues. Everything at shop.catholic.com. All books, CDs, DVDs, ebooks, tracks, and MP3s are 15% off if you put in the promo code SPRING18. Why did they pick 18? What's that all about? Well, I'll work on that. We'll see you tomorrow, God willing, on Catholic Answers Live.